Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Professor Ming's Strategic Insights. I remember back in mid to late April, I was talking about the trade war, the tariff war between Washington and Beijing, and I made some concluding remarks. I said, I was asking myself, what does Beijing want out of this round of trade war against Washington? And I said, it seems to me that they want, they have 3 layers of targets or goals in their mind. For the bottom layer or for the low layer, they'll take the, they will adopt the so-called dilatory tactic or stonewalling tactic. They will want to delay the process of negotiation with the United States as long as possible, and then eventually, under heavy pressure by Trump, then they'll sign a deal, or sign an agreement, and eventually they'll fulfill only a part of this agreement, whatever you call it, and no matter how much money is involved, and so on and so forth. So that's their low ranking or low level target. That's for them. And for the middle level target or the mid-level goal, well, believe it or not, they want to bring down Trump. They want to kick Trump out of his Oval Office, and they want to terminate this tariff war. And that's the mid-range target for them. As for the top or as for the priority, the top priority for them is to bring down the United States altogether. And they want to defeat the United States, and they want to seize Taiwan, of course, and they want to dominate Asia and even dominate the entire world. Well, some people may find it crazy. So after that, I came across a few opportunities and met with a few friends, and they said, yeah, I watched your show and it was good, but I have some doubts about your concluding remarks. I find your conclusions hard to accept or hard to believe, especially the bring down Trump or bring down the United States altogether. They found it hard to accept. Well, yeah, I know. From an normal American point of view, it is hard to accept. It's hard to believe. It's almost inconceivable, because you see the discrepancies between the two countries, between the two states are so big and so vast, it's almost impossible. No matter you're talking about the comparison between the two countries, economy, technological advancement, military forces, diplomatic influence, or the comprehensive national capabilities, no matter in what sense, in quantitative measure, United States is far superior to that or to those of the of communist China. So people would think it's almost impossible. Well, I don't blame you, because, well, I keep reminding you that communists think things very differently from the way we think things. So question is how they perceive this question, or how they're going to analyze this question. Well, let me try to explain it from a different angle. First of all, do you remember in a very, very early show of mine, we talked about how the communists see the world, or see the development of human history, or the development or the changes of human society. We talked about the theory of so-called 5 stages or 5 phases: primitive commune society, and slavery society, and feudal society, feudalist society, capitalist society, and socialism and communism. And they're convinced, or at least they're brainwashed, to believe that communism is the final stage and the highest stage of human development, or the development of human society. That is to say, capitalism will phase out and be replaced by socialism eventually. That is to say, in real terms, China, or communist China, will defeat the United States eventually and will claim dominance of the entire world. And this is also the root of their slogan: the East is rising and the West is declining. That's how it came out in the first place. And that's the first way, or that's the first angle to look at this question. The second angle to look at this question is, you may not know, but they are very good at dialectics. they think or they analyze things in dialectic terms or in dialectic perspective. They're very good at detecting their opponent's weak points or their contradiction, using their jargons, their contradictions inside their own camp or inside their team or whatsoever. In Western language, we'll call it, they know where your Achilles heel is, or they know where it's at. So that's how they look at things. Besides, in their view or in their mind, when they look at the past history of how they came to grips with the United States and the past history for the past 60, 70 years or even longer, they think they seldom lose. They won many times. That's how they look at things. And you may not believe it, but let me give a brief overview of how they look at this part of history, the history of between the United States and Communist China, how they came to grips with each other. 70 years is a long history. Let me just single out a few prominent cases to illustrate my point. First one is the Korean War from 1950 to 1953. Do you think that the Americans won the war? The Communist Chinese think that they won the war because they didn't lose, they didn't withdraw. In the eyes of Beijing, they did not lose the war. It came to a truce between the American troops and the Chinese troops. And they stopped at the parallel 38. And Korea is still divided into two. So Beijing thinks that they did not lose the war. In another way, they even think they had a victory or they had an upper hand because they forced the number one country, the United States, who just won the war, against Nazi Germany and against Japan. And if they can end up the war, if they can conclude the war with a truce, that means they did not lose. So that's the first case. Second case is the Vietnam War. Remember the horse game I mentioned earlier? How the author of the book, The Art of War Fighting, more than 2,000 years ago. And in Vietnam War, China or Communist China adopted the same strategy and to tackle with the United States. And then again, United States, actually, they lost the war. And so Communist China think that they won the war. That's the second case. The third case is the Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Union. Well, we all know that they ended up in a very tense arms race, and it concentrated on nuclear weapons, how the size of the warhead and the various types of vehicles and things like that. And eventually, the United States could not stand with the situation, and that they thought they had to figure a way out. So Nixon played his so-called Nixon card. He visited Shanghai, and eventually he signed a Shanghai communique with Zhou Enlai, Premier Zhou Enlai, in 1972. And then that was the first communique between Communist China and the United States. That's what they call the normalization of relations between the two countries. Remember, China was still caught in the middle of the Cultural Revolution, very chaotic and very messy Cultural Revolution, and they could still do that. So with that, Nixon tried to collaborate with Beijing and try to contain Moscow in that way. And what happened almost simultaneously is that Communist China entered into the United Nations, and they kicked out Taiwan, kicked out Taipei. And then the United States became weaker and weaker because of the Vietnam War. In terms of financial situation, in terms of social stability, and it was filled with the opposition to war, that kind of atmospheres. So in the eyes of Beijing, that they were even benefited greatly from the Cold War between Moscow and Washington. So they won again, and that's the third case. The fourth case is, well, after that, the Mao passed away, and Gang of Four were arrested and thrown into jail, and then Deng Xiaoping came back, his third came back, and that's a miracle anyway. So after he came back to power, he initiated the effort to reform and opening up to the outside world, what they call 改革开放 in Mandarin. And he was trying very hard to develop economy instead of to do politics or to concentrate on what Mao Zedong was saying, that class struggle and things like that. So United States, some American businessmen saw the opportunity and jumped in. They reached out and helped out China out of some, how should we call it, romantic hallucination. First is they can make big money out of China because China seems to be a big market for them. Almost 10 billion people at a time, and with a very strong, powerful labor force, and so on and so forth. So they got all kinds of fascination about China. And Deng Xiaoping utilized that fully, very completely. So he got a lot of things from the United States. Not only doing business with the United States tried to strengthen China, try to help out with its military build-up, technological advancement, and scientific research, and so on and so forth, just for the purpose of building up China so that China could become a formidable enemy for the Soviet Union, so that they can let China to share some of the diplomatic and strategic burden from the Soviet Union. And the United States and the Western European countries could have a better time for them. So that's one part. The other part is deep down inside, they're thinking if China's economy is developing at a very fast speed and at a very healthy condition, then eventually they'll probably lead to democratization. That's what I call the classical theory of democratization. And I pointed out earlier that that's not right. It's false. But anyway, that's what the Americans, or what some American politicians were convinced. A peaceful evolution, a peaceful revolution will come after a strong economic development. That's a hope they hold for China at the time. The fifth case is the Tiananmen massacre, which happened on June the 4th, 1989. And the United States government was so indignant about the slaughter, so they decided to impose a sanction against Beijing. Guess what? The sanction lasted a year, a little bit longer than a year. Then Iraq invaded Kuwait. In order to get a yes vote from China, from Communist China, in the United Nations to legally launch an invasion or launch a military sanction against Iraq, President Bush, the old Bush, decided to lift the sanction against Beijing. So Beijing did not make any concession. Beijing did not yield not even an inch. And he got the sanction lifted. Not out of his own effort, but anyway, he got it. So in Beijing's eyes, they won again, without, like I said, without making any concession to the United States or even to the imperialist United States. So these are the 5 cases in the eyes of Beijing that they won, or at least they did not lose. I have more to come, but because of time limit, I have to stop here today. I'll continue with the rest of the case and my analysis on the topic. That's all I want to share with you today. You can consider this one as part 1, and I'll see you in part 2. So if you like our program, please share it with your friends, and then if you haven't subscribed to it, please do so, and click the icon bell so that you can get an on-time notification. I'll see you next time then.